Just the recording start ಆಯ್ತಾ? 1 2 3 okay good.
Electric vehicles have created a buzz because they are said to be both environment friendly and health friendly. They don't pollute the environment and they don't endanger human health with toxic emissions that could cause asthma, bronchitis or cancer. However, electric cars travel shorter distances than conventional cars, take longer to refuel and are more expensive. Two-wheelers and three-wheelers also constitute a major part of India's electric vehicle story. There are said to be more electric three-wheelers in India than in any other country. This evening, Rtn V Shankar will discuss the rationale for electric cars and their pros and cons as compared to conventional vehicles. He will talk about common perceptions of EVs, some of which correct and some not. He drives an electric car himself. Rtn Shankar is a product of IIT Madras and IIM Calcutta. In 1988, he founded CAMS, or Computer Age Management Services, which provides a platform and services to the Indian mutual fund industry. Rtn Shankar presently engages in public and angel investing and in mentoring for both startups and mature organizations through his investment vehicle, Access Investments Private Limited. He has won several awards, such as the Entrepreneur of the Year Award from TIE Chennai, the Distinguished Alumnus Award by IIM Calcutta, and the Distinguished Alumnus Award by IIT Madras. TIE India Angels is a pan-India angel network. Over to Rtn Shankar.
Thank you, sir. Put off the lights. Put the light off. And the cover it. Yes. Correct. So I want to say upfront that I am not any great technical expert on this subject. I drive an EV, I read, and I've read a little bit more than usual because I know you people will ask me very incisive questions. So bear in mind, I'm not a subject matter expert, so to speak. We have people like Sujesh here who are far more experts, generally speaking, in the engineering space. Okay, that's next slide, please. So I want to, sorry. So I wanted to define what an EV is before we start talking. It's a very loose term. I used to have a Prius some years ago, which at that time we used to call an EV. But actually it's a motor assisted IC engine vehicle. What it really does is the battery is used as a buffer to fill up gaps in power delivery by the IC engine. The IC engine's power, that's why you change gears, right? Because the IC engine delivers power only in a narrow RPM band, whereas the vehicle goes obviously faster and slower than that. So you use gears to match the power delivery range of the motor to the speed of the wheels. In that process, the vehicle stops at signals, it accelerates, slows down. So sometimes there is excess power which is wasted in the form of heat. Sometimes there is excess power required which is not available, so the acceleration is slow. This gap is met either on the delivery side or on the storage side by the battery. That is the logic of a hybrid vehicle. And what it effectively does is it ups the mileage a little bit. If you are getting 10, you would get 12. If you are getting 12, you would get 14, something like that. But that is not the current definition of EV in India or anywhere else in the world. In India or in everywhere, an EV is defined as one which solely uses electric batteries as the prime source of energy. There are also EVs that use other sources of energy. Of course, ultimately it's electric, but the electricity is not generated by plugging into the grid. It is generated internally by fuel cells, and what you do is you put hydrogen inside instead of petrol, and that hydrogen is used to generate electricity. It's a slightly futuristic technology. There are one or two vehicles which are supposed to be production vehicles, but they are so expensive and so rare that basically they don't exist. They are more concepts than anything else. So for the purpose of this discussion, I am only talking about EVs as I have described. Next. So the EV has three major components, unlike 2000 components in an IC engine. There is the motor, there is the battery, and there is something called a controller. The controller is the heart, it's the software, it's the heart of everything that gets the energy from the battery and makes the vehicle do what you want it to do. It also controls the charging discharging rate of the battery, because that is very, very crucial. All the fires and all you hear about is because of a mismatch between what the battery can take and what it is being asked to do. So conceptually these are the three. There are lots of little bits, but basically this is it. Other than that, of course, you have the wheels and the brake and all that, which are common, so I'm not talking about that. Next. So as I said, there are probably 2000 components in an IC engine, starting with the very small nuts, bolts, piston rings, blah blah blah. There are basically only 3 or 4 large components in an EV, which is good and which is bad. The good thing is that there is very little maintenance per se. They are all high reliability components. The battery is guaranteed for 10-15 years. Barring an accident or something catastrophic, you don't have to touch it for a long period of time. EVs are seasoned enough. The oldest EVs on the road are 5, 6, 7 years old. Nothing catastrophic has happened. The batteries have not failed en masse. So I think the battery has got a good thing going. The motors are also good. The downside, of course, is that any one of those components does fail, then you have no choice but to replace it. And they are really big expenses. If you are under warranty, good for you. If you are not under warranty, that's like buying a new car in itself. Whereas obviously, in a car, everything can be replaced. Just atomically it can be replaced, small bits. Unless you have a Mercedes or something. Any normal car, you can replace a ring, a piston, anything you want, you can get aftermarket and replace it. Next. The couple of key technical differences. One is the fuel. Petrol has, what is energy density? Energy density is if you take a kilogram or a gram of the fuel in the container that it comes in, how much energy does it give you? Now, petrol does not have a container. Petrol is just poured into the vehicle. So there is no container weight per se for the petrol. Petrol has an energy density which is 50 times the energy density of the battery. So 1 kilo of petrol, which is about 1.2 liters of petrol, and 1 kilo of battery, if I compare, because you've got to lug that weight around wherever you go, right? You need 50 times the weight of battery to give you the same ultimate energy output as equivalent weight of petrol. That is the one big problem with electric vehicles today, which is that the electricity per se obviously has no weight, but the container in which the electricity is stored is so damn heavy that it negates the entire purpose of it. And however, the electric motor itself operates at very high levels of efficiency. An IC engine, there is friction, there is tailpipe heat, there is a whole lot of wastage of energy. It operates at 25-30%, depending on which gear you're on, as low as 10% also at times. Whereas an electric motor per se, if you give it 100 watts, it will give you 90 watts of output, almost. So it's very, very efficient. As far as IC engines go, scale matters. A large IC engine is always more efficient than a small IC engine. So if you take a two-wheeler, pathetic, cars, then JCBs and all are more efficient and so on. And as I said before, ICEs have a limited RPM range in which they can generate actual power, usable power. So you have to maneuver to keep the RPMs in that range. Let us say it is 1800 to 3000 or something, is the optimal range, where you get power at reasonable fuel efficiency. So engine must always operate at that, so you move your gears around to make sure that you get the speed that you want. Electric motors have torque from 0 all the way to whatever RPM they are, 5000 or 6000. So starting and ending. No need for, at best there is one gear, which is a one-time reduction or increase in the RPM. But that's it. With one gear you get all the power that you want, starting from 0 all the way to max speed. Next. What are the key operational differences? Very quiet. First of all, there is no concept of idling in an EV. You start the car, so long as you don't put your foot to the accelerator, nothing is moving. Dead silence. Okay, only the environmental noise. As I said, there is torque from the very word go. So I am only comparing apples and apples. Let's not compare an EV with a Porsche or something. An EV against its comparable IC engine. Almost every EV in India today has a comparable IC engine. So Hector petrol, Nexon petrol. They all have their petrol. If I do apples to apple comparison, the pickup is tremendously better, no doubt about it. The operating cost is obviously 1 rupee per kilometer, 120 per kilometer. And the great thing which I will come to later is that whereas petrol prices have been sort of freed up and linked to world prices of crude, fuel, that is power, which is ultimately generated from a similar source, either coal or diesel or gas or whatever, whose prices go up and down. That price is controlled and will never increase. The price of power in India will take decades before it gets linked to market prices and so on. Today I was in UK last week. The price of power there, which is electric power, is going up almost linearly with the oil prices because they use oil to generate power. Whereas here we have not seen a change in power prices for the last 7-8 months, even though oil prices are more than doubled in that period, and prices at the gas pump are also doubled. So your incidental advantage is that by going into electricity, you are sort of inflation protected against energy cost. Obviously, maintenance cost is lumpy. I mean, during warranty there is no maintenance cost, but post warranty, if you do have a maintenance event, you are going to pay like 25% of the cost of the car or something to maintain it, or there is zero. So that's how it is. But the initial cost is a bummer. Okay, any EV today is a four-wheeler I'm talking about, even two-wheelers for that matter, is at least 75% more expensive than its corresponding petrol equivalent, 60-75%. And that is after considering the fact that there is no registration. In our state, you don't have to pay that 10% odd registration fee. In spite of that, it is 75% more expensive. So that's the operation differences. Next. So, what is the full battery range? With AC, 225-250 kilometers is what you will get with most cars. The charging time in a home charger, in a portable charger, you can do about 6%. The charging time, interestingly, is described as miles per hour. How many miles of range do you get with 1 hour of charge? That is the universal way of describing charging rates. But I made it simple by saying 6% per hour. So that means in this case you will get 15 kilometers of range if you charge for 1 hour. That is the home charger. Then you have a next level charger which will give you 13% per hour. This also is capable of being used from home if you have a robust electric connection. Otherwise you can't use it from home. Then you have the super fast chargers which are there in the dealerships and so on. That requires a special EB line. You can't really, it's 150 kilowatts or something, so you require a solid line. But that will give you 250 kilometers of range in just an hour. Apartment complexes is a big problem. People with 2 or 4 wheelers in apartment complexes have to figure out a way to charge their cars on a regular basis. This is a problem that has been faced and solved abroad, which I will come to in a moment. But in India, we are yet sort of just facing up to that problem and trying to figure out how to deal with it. The way they have solved it in other, and I was looking at, since I was going to have this event, I was looking at all the EV related things in London, so what are the cars, how are they charging, etc. They have these on the street parking stations, right? And they are all linked through an app. You can actually go there, put in your car number, etc., etc., and then that station is reserved for you. If somebody else tries to come and charge, it won't allow that car to be charged. It is reserved for you. Only your car, because the battery is intelligent and the interface recognizes the vehicle, recognizes the battery, so it will only link to that battery. So if you have reserved the charging spot for 2 hours, 8 AM to 10 AM, you and you alone can charge it from 8 AM to 10 AM. So the range anxiety comes out of 2 things. One is, will I get there? 2, after I get there, how will I come back? There are 2 aspects of range anxiety. The first one is easily solved because it always tells you so many kilometers of range left. You decide to go, you decide not to go. If it says, in fact I'll come to that in the next slide, so I'll do that. So there are third-party charging stations coming up. Even in Delhi and other places I have seen street charging stations, which are very good. The real estate load on a charging station is very high because unlike a petrol station where you take 5 minutes to fill up, here it takes you 3 hours, 4 hours to top up. Not even to fill up, to top up. You are at 50%, you want to go to 80%. It takes, so that real estate, one car size, is blocked for 3 hours or 4 hours. And so in an hour, in a day, you can do 10, 8 changes, 6 changes, 7 changes of that real estate. Whereas in a petrol station, you can fill in that same time 100 cars or 200 cars. So the real estate return on this is a bit of a challenge right now. The mitigating factor is that it's quite easy to set up a charging station. Every apartment in theory can be a charging station. All you need is a wire and the charger. So in time it will get solved. Next. So just to put some facts, some tangible facts on the range, we can go to Mahabs and come back on a full charge, okay, and have something left over. We can go to Pondicherry, but having gone there, you need a friendly place in which you can charge overnight, because you'll be basically tapped out by the time you go there. You can go to Bangalore. There is a charging station in Vellore. There's a public charging station in Vellore, but we don't yet have the technology to reserve it. You can phone somebody and say, "Theek hai sahab, it will be there." But when you actually go, will it be there? You don't know. Or there may be no power, or the equipment may be down, or whatever. You don't know. There is no way of monitoring and making sure that it's actually working and the space is there for you. And in the city, which is what I use it for, I bring it from 100 to 50, 100 to 50. I don't go below 50. That 50% is approximately a week's use for me. So that's how it works. On trips, if you have a friendly hotel or a motel or something and they give you a 15 amp outlet, you can go stay there overnight and get charged. So that's roughly the use case models that I can see in India at this point. Next. So as I said, how are these problems being solved in more mature markets where EVs have been present? US is the most mature market. Tesla cars today have a 650, the extended range versions of 650 kilometers of range. Ours, the best case, is 250 kilometers. So, A, you have solved it by drastically increasing the range. 1. 2. Tesla alone owns 30,000 supercharger stations. 30,000. And it's not all over the states, it's there in the East Coast and West Coast, basically where people travel a lot by car. In the middle, A, they don't take two EVs. There was a very nice article on Ford and its EV. Ford has a truck called F-150, right? It's an iconic truck. It's the by truck I don't mean truck. I mean those pickups. You know, the American definition of trucks. It's the iconic and most highly sold truck. And all the the caricature of the white guy who worked in a steel mill and pants coming here like this and big belly. Those are the guys who use it and they enjoy it, right? So there was a survey on them because Ford is launching an electric F-150. Every single one of them who are hardcore users of F-50 laughed. They said, "No way in hell I'll give up my gas truck for an electric truck." But women want to use it. So they have now discovered a totally new model for electric trucks which didn't exist before because women felt it was noisy, large, etc. This they find it to be cool, etc. etc. Interesting side fact. Tesla has a great trip planner app. You say, I want to go from, say, Boston to Washington or Boston to New York. It will map out the tour for you. It knows the state of your car now when you're starting. So it will tell you have 80%. You can get to this charging point. I have already reserved that charging point with your particular car details. It will be available. You should be reaching there by this time. 1 hour I have for you. In 1 hour you top up another 100 kilometers or whatever. Go to the next place. There's a restaurant nearby. Have a coffee. This will get charged. So they lay out a nice trip plan for you. Remove the range anxiety completely from you. You know that if you follow that trip, you will get that, no problems at all. Next. So this is what I said. As I said, in 15 minutes they give you 300 kilometers of charge. So that's the time you take to have a cup of coffee. They're really fast superchargers. Range anxiety is now not there. I can tell you, with all my friends who have Teslas, they don't care about the distance. They just get into their car and go. They know that they will find a charger somewhere. I think the fact that Tesla was effectively an extraordinarily well-funded entity and it sort of had freedom because there were no restrictions, there were no rules, and they were sort of writing on a clear sheet of paper. They were creating the architecture of this entire EV system. They could design it the way they wanted it. It turned out to be also good for the driver, which is why they have 30,000 charging stations. Because in their mind, in Elon Musk's mind, he knew that the car would never sell unless he found fuel charging stations for it. That's the only way to make it work. So in his mind, the car and the charging stations are inseparable. You can't say somebody else is going to do the charging station, I'll just do the car. It doesn't work. You need that also. So he did it and it works. Next. Next. Oh, next. So there are some popularly held beliefs which I want to either explain or debunk, as the case may be. So the EVs are economically better for the buyer. For some buyers, yes. Most buyers no. That's the short answer. The initial cost is twice as much, roughly, as I said. 8.5 lakhs for the Nexon Petrol, 15 lakhs for the Nexon EV. They are otherwise exactly the same. Okay, they are exactly the same. It's not that you're getting something different which you could use to support the increased price. It's only the fact that it's an EV that's costing more. Running cost obviously is wales apart. It's 11, 12, 13 rupees depending on the style of driving as a standard 1 rupee per kilometer. 80,000 kilometers to break even. Now you have to decide whether you are the sort of driver who will drive 80,000 kilometers in some reasonable period of, let's say 2 years, 3 years. Will you drive? I am not. Many people in urban situations are not. Unless you have a factory in Sriperumbudur and you go there every day, even then you may just about make it. And with larger EVs, as you go up the scale, the absolute value of the difference in price becomes higher and higher and higher. So in the case of an MG, the difference is, here the difference is 8 lakhs, there the difference is 15 lakhs. So you have to account 15 lakhs through driving. Okay, so it becomes more and more challenging to create an economic rationale for buying this. Except for the interesting thing that I found in London is that all the cabs are being incentivized to convert to EV. Think why? I'll come to it in the last slide. Next. Yeah, the next notion is that EVs are very environmentally friendly. Yes and no. It's a question of whose environment. The environment where the car is, it's certainly friendly. But to the environment, big picture for the world, I don't think so. Because the power that you're using to charge is the same power that is being used to burn the lights and fans and everything. What is the source of that power? In India, 80% of power is coal. Okay, 20% is all things put together. And out of the 20%, probably 18% is hydro. So all this newfangled stuff, solar and all, is only some 5% totally. So if I take an average energy mix, the average kilowatt that comes out of the line is 80% coal. Okay, so what you're doing is you're making him burn a little more coal in order to burn a little less petrol over here. That's really what's happening. So yes, it's a great case for taking pollution out of the city and into some hopefully non-city area where the power plant is. But is there a net benefit to the world at this point? I don't think so. As I said, depends on the original source of energy. One day in life, when say 50% of the power of India comes from solar and all that, then the equation will change. But right now the equation is not so. So effectively it's like a laundering system. It's like taking black money, making it white by buying some real estate and selling it. You're just taking black energy and converting it into green energy. Next. The other rationale as India specific is it reduces India's dependence on oil. Yes, it does. I mean, certainly you're not, because even the electricity comes out of coal and not oil, by and large 80%, and the coal is, again, 60% of coal is again Indian, only 40% is imported, etc. So it's, whereas 100% of the oil or 90% of the oil is imported. So there is a small change. But the fact is that only 30% of all petrol is used for transportation. The other 70% is used for commercial transportation, a whole lot of other stuff. I don't think EVs at their present cost and with the present incentive framework that exists are going to be a very massive thing at this point in time. Either the scale has to drive down prices or something has to happen. Some very capital rich startup has to come and start subsidizing EVs and selling them at half the price of petrol cars, etc., etc. Then it will happen. Otherwise, organically at the prices they are at, I think people will balk at buying EVs in scale, is what I think. But to the extent EVs come in, the energy mix changes. Instead of being 100% oil, of which 85% is imported, it becomes 80% coal because it's all electric, of which only 30% is imported. However, now you are importing batteries. Instead of importing oil, you are importing batteries. Batteries have a life, they have 10 years life or whatever, but still, it is imported. It's imported from an even worse exporter, which is China. At least oil is coming from Middle East, you have multiple sources. Battery is pretty much the only source is China. So that's where you are. Next one. So this I talked about. How long can I travel? Which is easily answered because it's there. There are trip computers. Up front it tells you how much time you have left, and it's 99% accurate. The bigger anxiety is, will I get a charger and how long do I have to hang around there to get enough to do my next leg? So range is being at, I think 250 kilometers is decent range. As time passes, see, there's no issue with range. You can put more battery. It's just that battery is the most expensive part of an EV. So the manufacturer has to come up with a decent sticker price that at least makes the vehicle somewhat saleable, if not fully saleable. And that limits the battery that you can put inside. Otherwise, no problem putting 650 kilometers in India also. Then the vehicle will cost 3 times what it's costing now. And possibility of selling becomes almost zero then. Charging infra is also getting sorted. I think that third-party charging stations are coming up dime a dozen, all going very well. Time to charge is, there are two problems with time to charge. See, today you can pump in with the force of a fire hose electricity into a battery. The challenge is the battery then gets overheated, right? We are already a high temperature country. Okay, we are not at 3 degrees or 4 degrees. Then you have a little leeway. We are already a 35-degree country. On top of it, you start pumping the batteries start getting hot. They start exploding. The life disappears. The lithium comes out and starts plating. All sorts of technical challenges. So it's just not possible in India to increase the charging rate beyond a point without seriously adverse effects on the battery or on life itself. Next. Battery swapping is a possibility. The challenge with battery swapping is that the level of trust in the incoming battery. You are giving your battery away and you're taking some battery. No, you're stuck with that battery. When you next try it, it's like getting a 100 rupee note from somebody or 500 rupee note from somebody. You're reading a file, you don't know if it's true, if it's a fake note or a right note. After that, it becomes your note. You can't say, I got it from him, so it's his. No, it's your note. When you give it that fellow, say, you gave me the note, I'm not going to take it. So, same problem with the battery. Battery swapping will work in closed loops, where, like a bus system, for example, the batteries are all owned by one person. The buses just take them and go. But if it is peer-to-peer, if it's third-party to third-party, there must be some way of certifying and guaranteeing that the battery is a good battery, that you are not going to get stuck with a lemon and not be able to exchange it next time you try to exchange it. So that is going to be a big challenge which people will have to resolve. EVs catch fire. I think the battery is very temperature sensitive. There's something called a battery management system. The battery management system is the most important part of a vehicle. It controls the charging and the discharging. So it will tell you when the battery is overheating, and therefore you don't have to do anything. It just keeps monitoring the state of the battery, many aspects, some 30-40 different parameters, and it says this is the rate at which the battery can heat. But that's the rate you can charge. Okay, it will automatically control the charging to that. Now that battery management system is designed for a particular environment. So if it's designed for China, where the temperatures are X, then it will work in China. If you bring the same thing and put it in India, where the temperature is X plus, it's 2X, then you have a problem, because it still thinks it is in China and it is regulating according to that, and then the battery explodes because it becomes too hot. People who sell cheap EVs, two-wheelers particularly, they don't necessarily customize the battery management system to India. And that is the problem that these challenges happen. Plus you have edge cases, freak cases, some combination of events, etc. So it just takes time to season and get the bugs out of the system, which just needs more time. But fundamentally there is nothing wrong with the EV architecture. As I said, the BMS and all aspects of the EV have to be Indianized to a much greater degree than they have been so far. Next. EVs can go through standing water. So I did a test last month. Take my EV through water and it works perfectly fine. So this I can speak from empirical evidence. You can actually drive through deeper water because there's no tailpipe, so no water can come in and all that. So it's perfectly fine. Your problem is water will come into the car from the doors. If not, that's a more bigger problem. Next. Now, specific to India, I think, the challenge for India is that our oil and gold are our two largest discretionary imports, right? Defense is a non-discretionary import because you have China waiting if they can tolerate. So, oil and gold. Can't do anything about gold, it's built into our DNA. Oil is linearly increasing year after year after year. More cars produce, more two-wheelers produce, people run around more, import more oil. That is going to kill us because we can only export so much software and so much other things. Beyond that, what can you do? You can't export that software. There's no appetite for software. Whereas appetite for oil is endless. You have to find a way to replace our energy source with something else, which is what the government is trying to do with solar and all the rest of it. Solar gives you power only for 6 hours a day. So it's really a very, very inefficient way of producing energy, but you can do nuclear other things. But if you want to reduce forest outflow on account of import of oil for transportation, then in my opinion, at the present moment, EVs are simply replacing one import with another import. They are not reducing the gross imports at all. And I don't think, seen on an end-to-end basis, with the electricity production mix that we have in the country today, they are not much greener or anything like that. coupled with it, we are a very strong hub of IC manufacturing, right? We manufacture, I don't know, 2 million, 3 million two-wheelers and more than 1 million four-wheelers a year, and particularly Chennai, and it's all disaster city. Imagine every single repair shop, every single manufacturing, every single ancillary, every single repair shop won't need to exist if everybody is EV. What happens to all those people? What happens to all those businesses? So it is a massive transition which, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But let us plan it out so that it happens gradually and the people are displaced at a reasonable rate that they can be absorbed somewhere else. We don't want everybody to go out of job at the same time. Next. See, there are other things that we can do. There is a singular focus on EVs because it's a sexy thing to do, right? EVs and all that. But there are other things that we can do. We can do ethanol blending. We have a lot of grain. Okay, we have grain coming out of the warehouses over years. Make some ethanol. Bring up the ethanol percentage to as high as 18-20% in petrol. It's possible. It will work perfectly well. Very good substitution. CNG is only 45% imported. Quite a lot of CNG produced in India. Go for CNG. We don't have battery manufacturing at scale. Okay, now people are gently getting in that, but we don't, and they will go, unless it's chicken and egg story. They don't have scale, so nobody will buy from them, etc., etc. So two-wheelers is where we have scale, and two-wheelers is where the ticket size difference between say 70,000 and 1,20,000 is not so massive as to put off people who want to buy. They don't mind spending that extra 50,000 because they will save something over time. Let us focus on two-wheelers. Let us incentivize two-wheelers. Let's get them adopted widely so that the battery acquisition will happen locally and that will give scale to the battery manufacturers. That is one way of looking at it. Right now, very recently I read about lithium prospecting licenses that have been given to people. They say that there is lithium to be found somewhere in India. Hopefully it will be. The FAME subsidy, there is a subsidy for two-wheelers, right? So every time you buy a two-wheeler, the government subsidizes. The cost that you see is actually after the subsidy. There is a subsidy of 10,000-15,000 rupees per Aadhaar card that they give. In my mind, they should be subsidizing per kilometer. They should not be subsidizing per vehicle. We should be actually subsidizing the couriers and the Swiggy delivery guys and so on who run 200 kilometers a day. They are the guys who will benefit India the most and will give the subsidy the maximum bang for the buck. People who buy the two-wheeler and sit at home and use it for 5 kilometers a day, you are just hogging the subsidy. You are not giving anything back because your consumption of fuel is so small and your saving therefore is so small, the government is not getting a return on its subsidy. So I think the subsidy strategy should be so many rupees per kilometer for the first 50,000 kilometers or some such thing. My opinion. Hydrogen, we've all read the news about how everybody is going after hydrogen, green hydrogen, etc. So these are the initiatives that, everybody is aware of them, but they all require big investments up front, big efforts up front, and there's no money. That's where it is. Next. So, in my opinion, for casual users, it's a statement you're making by buying an EV. You are not really, it's not really delivering any tangible benefit either to you as an owner or indeed to the environment, except to areas near your house because you're polluting that area little less. That's my opinion. Next. There you are.
Thank you, Shankar. I think we can take this.
How do the batteries get disposed of after 15 years?
So people are saying it's only 15 years away, we'll sort it out with that. That's the answer.
Stop the video. One more point, post-pandemic movement